Christmas is no place for losers, Mama. Those were his words. My son, the boy I raised alone, the man who just slammed the door in my face while his wife stood behind him, smiling as if it were the greatest show of the year. Loser. That word hung in the freezing December air like a curse. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, and I didn't beg. I just nodded quietly. I turned around and walked toward my car. But as I drove back to my home, something inside me changed. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. The kind of clarity that cuts deep like broken glass. That very night, sitting in front of my laptop, I called to cancel the shared mortgage payments on their house, canceled their auto insurance, and stopped every automatic transfer that had been supporting their comfortable life for years. 5 minutes. That's all it took to destroy the fragile house of cards they thought was their success. Now he's losing his mind. Let me tell you how I reached this point. Let me describe how a mother can become a loser, and how that loser can become something much worse, someone who has nothing left to lose. This all began 5 years ago. Jamal had just married Tiffany. She was beautiful, ambitious, with a smile that shone brightly in photographs, but disappeared as soon as the camera was put away. One spring afternoon, they came to visit me in my small apartment. I was excited. I thought it was just a friendly visit, a chance for them to include me in their new life. But it wasn't a simple visit. It was a negotiation. Mama, we need your help. Jamal said, Tiffany wants a house, a real two-story home with a yard and a nice neighborhood. But the bank requires a cosigner. It's just paperwork, just your signature. You won't have to pay anything. It's just for security. Tiffany reached out and touched my hand. Her nails were perfect, long, expensive, coral colored. Mama Celeste, you know how important it is for us to get started on the right foot. A family needs stability. Your future grandchildren need a home. Future grandchildren. Those words sparked the perfect image. I pictured a house filled with laughter, Christmas celebrations, Sunday morning pancakes, me baking cookies and telling stories as grandma. I agreed. I signed without reading the small print. I signed because I trusted him, because he was my son, and love doesn't look at contracts. 6 months later, they were back. This time it was for a car, a shiny black SUV. It cost 20,000. We need you to make the initial payment, Mama, just $8,000. We promise to pay you back in 6 months. I withdrew the money from my savings. Savings I had saved up by cleaning houses, ironing clothes for others, working double shifts when my body shouted for rest. $8,000. I handed it over with a smile. Because that's what mothers do. We give, we always give. 6 months became a year turned into forever. Then the emergency started, small at first. Mama, the water heater broke. It's $200. Mama, Tiffany needs dental work, which will cost $2,000. Mama, the children need new clothes for school, about $500. And I have paid. I always paid because each time I hesitated, Jamal would ask, don't you trust me? Don't you want your grandchildren to have the best? I thought you were different, Mama. I thought you supported us. Guilt. That was their favorite instrument. They played me like an out-of-tune piano, and I sounded exactly how they wanted. But it wasn't just about the money. It was everything else. The calls that only came when they needed something, the invitations that never arrived, the birthdays I wasn't welcome at because Tiffany had invited her fancy friends. And I just didn't fit into their world of champagne flutes and designer dresses. I wore the same gray dress I had for 10 years, the same one I wore to Jamal's wedding, the same one Tiffany once looked at with disdain and muttered something about charity and thrift stores. But I stayed silent because that was what I had learned to do. In my family, kindness felt like an invisible leash I wore, believing it was a precious pearl necklace. Over time, visits became fewer and eventually stopped altogether. They only reached out when they needed money or someone to watch the children, especially when they had other plans. I was the free babysitter, the emergency credit card, the easy solution. I was never invited to dinner, nor included in the family photos they shared on social media. I only existed on the edges, in the shadows, or in the receipts of their bank statements. Despite this, I kept paying, kept smiling, kept saying yes. That is until one December afternoon, I arrived with gifts, with wine, with hope. I had bought toys for my grandchildren, expensive perfume for Tiffany, a silk tie for Jamal. I spent over 1,000, money I didn't really have, because it was Christmas, and Christmas is for family. I rang the doorbell as the snow fell softly. Everything looked perfect, like a postcard picture. Jamal opened the door, but he did not smile. He looked at me as if I were a stranger, as if I were not the woman who had spent 30 hours in labor bringing him into the world, or the one who skipped meals so he could eat. It was as if I were nothing. Behind him, the house was brightly lit. Gold lights gleamed. A large tree was decorated with elegant silver ornaments and garlands, and the scent of roast turkey and cinnamon filled the air. Laughter, soft music, everything looked like a scene from a movie. A perfect family, a perfect Christmas. But I was not part of that picture. Tiffany appeared behind Jamal. She wore a wine-colored dress, elegant and expensive, probably bought with the money I had sent last month for the kids' supposed piano lessons. She looked me up and down. Her eyes settled on my old coat, my worn shoes, and the bag of gifts I carried with such enthusiasm. She smiled. But it was not a warm smile. It was the kind you give someone about to hear bad news. Jamal, I said, "Merry Christmas, honey. I brought gifts for everyone. I thought we could have dinner together." He didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at me, and in that silence, I heard everything I didn't want to hear. I sensed years of contempt, indifference, and exploitation. "Mama," he began. His voice was cold and controlled. "I don't think it's a good idea for you to come in." Those words struck me like invisible fists. "Excuse me." Tiffany moved closer, resting her hand on Jamal's shoulder, a possessive gesture. "Celeste," she said. She used my name, not mame or mother-in-law, just my name, as if I were an employee arriving on the wrong day. "We have important guests tonight," she continued. "People from Jamal's office, his boss, clients. It's a business dinner, you understand. Not really a family gathering." I looked at Jamal, waiting for him to say something, anything defend me, remind them I was his mother and had the right to be there. But he simply looked away, showing he was too afraid to face the issue. I asked, "What about the children?" My voice shook a little, but I tried to keep it steady. "At least let me give them their presents. They are my grandchildren." Tiffany let out a sigh, as if I were a problem she needed to handle patiently. "The kids are busy. Besides, they already have too many toys." "They don't need more." She took the bag from my hands, opened it, examined the contents, and I saw her face shift to clear contempt. "These plastic toys, Celeste, we buy quality gifts for our children. This is, well, it's a bit common." Common? That word struck me deep, like a rusty knife piercing my chest. Jamal finally spoke, and when he did, he shattered what little hope I had left. "Mama, listen. It's not personal, but Christmas isn't a place for losers. Tonight is important for us, for our future. We can't, well, we can't give the wrong impression. Losers." I repeated the word as if it were poison on my tongue. He shrugged. "You understand what I mean, don't you? You live in a small apartment and work cleaning houses. You're not in good health, and you haven't achieved much success. The people coming today are important. They have high standards." Tiffany nodded. "For tonight only, Celeste," she said. "I'm sure you understand. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. You'd be out of place." Out of place. In the house I helped buy with money I sent. Eating food I probably paid for without realizing it. I looked at my son. I searched his eyes for a spark of the little boy who used to hug me and call me the best mom in the world. But I saw nothing. Only coldness, only shame. Shame of me, of the woman who sacrificed everything so we could have a better life. Tiffany then leaned in gently to close the door. "Maybe it's better if you spend Christmas alone at your place. It's more suitable for someone in your position and in your circumstances." And before I could respond, the door closed gently and slowly, like the lid of a coffin. I stood outside in the cold, still holding the bag of gifts. Snow fell softly on my head, my shoulders, and on my broken heart. I could hear the sounds of laughter inside, the clinking of glasses and festive music playing. Life was moving forward, but I no longer felt part of it. I walked slowly to my car, each step feeling heavy. I opened the door, got inside, left the gift on the passenger seat, and for a moment just sat there, breathing deeply, trying to understand what had just happened. I didn't cry yet, not now. I started the engine and drove in silence. The streets were lit with Christmas lights. Families strolled hand in hand. Children's laughter echoed. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, except me. I reached my apartment, climbed the stairs, opened the door, and turned on the light. There was my life, small, simple, lonely. I took off my coat, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window. At last, the tears started to fall, silent, bitter, hot. I cried for the daughter I was, for the mother I longed to become, and for the grandmother they never allowed me to be. But above all, I cried for the fool I had turned into. The fool who believed love could be bought through sacrifice. The fool who thought that endlessly giving would eventually earn me a place in their lives. That night, I couldn't find sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, remembering, connecting the pieces. With each memory, the understanding grew clearer, like the sunrise after a long, dark night, slow yet certain. I remembered the first time Jamal asked me for money after they got married, $200 for an emergency. He never explained what the emergency was, and I never asked. I also remembered when he stopped calling me Mama and began calling me Celeste, as if the title had become too intimate, too uncomfortable. I remembered all the times Tiffany made comments about my clothes, my hair, the way I spoke, always masked as concern, but always tinged with contempt. I recalled the forgotten birthdays, the calls that were never returned, the broken promises, and I remembered the money. So much money. Thousands upon thousands that slipped from my hands into theirs like water through fingers, silent yet constant. The mortgage I secretly paid when they struggled to keep up. The $600 a month I sent as if it were a duty. The auto insurance, the home repairs, the kids' classes, everything. Then I realized I wasn't his mother. I was his bank. I wasn't his mom. I was his resource. Resources are used, taken advantage of, and thrown away once they are no longer needed. That understanding didn't come as a shout. It arrived as a whisper, cold, clear, and honest. I stood up from the chair, walked over to my desk, and opened my laptop. The screen shimmered in the dark of my apartment. I logged into my bank account and saw it all laid out. The full picture of my financial burdens, automatic payments to Jamal Jake, $600 each month for 5 years, totaling $36,000. Shared mortgage payments of $450 every month because I was the co-signer. When the payments weren't made in full, the bank charged me. Then there was auto insurance, $70 monthly. Family dental plan, $80. The list continued endlessly, like a drain that wouldn't stop. I moved the cursor, hovering over the cancel button, and took a deep breath. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, just a calm, peaceful feeling. The kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding inside. I clicked cancel. The word appeared on the screen, like the final sentence in a story. Are you sure you want to cancel this automatic transfer? Yes. Cancel. Another click, another cancellation, repeated many times. Each click sounded like a door closing behind me. But this time, I was the one closing the door from inside, from my side, from my peace. Jamal Jakes' automatic transfer was canceled. The shared mortgage payment was canceled. Auto insurance for Jamal Jakes and Tiffany Jakes was canceled. The family dental plan was canceled. The gym membership, which Tiffany had insisted was for her mental health, was canceled. One by one, I went through these decisions, calmly, carefully, without rush or anger, like a surgeon finally removing a growth that had been developing over many years. It took me exactly 5 minutes to break free from 5 years of exploitation. When I finished, I closed my laptop, sat quietly in my apartment, and listened to the silence. Outside, the city was asleep. The snow kept falling, and for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar in my chest, a sense of lightness. It was as if I had been carrying heavy stones in my pockets and had finally let them go, as if I had been swimming underwater and had finally reached the surface. I didn't regret any of it for a moment. I poured myself another cup of tea, sat by the window, and waited. I wasn't waiting for their call. I did not wait for their apology. Instead, I waited for the sunrise, knowing that when that sun appeared, I would feel different. I would be free. Christmas passed by alone. I ate a simple bowl of soup and watched an old movie on television. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months because there were no expectations to fulfill, no calls to answer, no disappointments to accept. There was only silence. And I learned that silence can be the most beautiful sound in the world. The days that followed felt unusually peaceful. New Year's arrived and went quietly. I raised a glass of juice in my own company. I laughed at how strange it all was and made myself a promise. This year wouldn't be about giving, it would be about truly living. In January, the cold arrived, bringing with it the bills. The bills I used to pay before they even knew they existed. Now those bills would go directly into their mailbox, into their hands, becoming part of their reality. The first was the mortgage, the extra $300 I paid each month because the account was always short. The bank doesn't forgive, it doesn't listen to excuses, it only looks at the numbers. And when those numbers don't add up, the bank takes action, then the insurance lapsed, and without it, the car isn't considered legal. Jamal can't drive his sleek black SUV to work, and Tiffany can't go to her lunches with friends, showing off her perfect life. Then the little things, going to the gym, her dental plan, the streaming services I paid for and they enjoyed, all disappeared like smoke. I did nothing but keep living my life. I went to the market and bought food, just for myself, not for any emergencies. I paid my own bills, not someone else's. I bought a book I'd wanted to read for years, but couldn't afford because I kept sending my money elsewhere. I sat comfortably on my small couch, flipping through pages one after another without any interruptions, no calls, no favors asked, and no guilt bothering me. It was a rare moment of peace, quiet and simple, just for myself. Yet I understood that this calm wouldn't last because bills don't go away easily. And sooner or later, reality would come knocking. It always does. It was a Tuesday in mid January, 14 days after I had canceled everything I could. My phone suddenly rang. The caller was Jamal. I watched as it vibrated on the table. I didn't pick up. It rang again and again. I let it keep ringing. Each time the phone chimed, I felt a small relief, as if it confirmed that there were consequences at last, gravity pulling things back into place. Then the messages started arriving, dozens of them, one after another, like a stream of desperation, searching for an escape. Mama, where are you? Call me. It's urgent. Another message. Mama, I need to talk to you. It's important. Still another. Why aren't you answering? Are you okay? The worry seemed fake. I knew it wasn't genuine concern. It was concern for his situation, his comfort, and his collapsing castle that was starting to fall apart. I didn't answer. I deleted the messages without reading them fully because it was no longer my problem. It wasn't my duty to hold up his world while they tore down mine. 2 days later, they came knocking at my door. It was evening. I was reading my book peacefully. Suddenly, the doorbell rang loudly, almost desperately. I looked through the peephole. It was Jamal. He had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was messy. He looked tired, worried, almost human, almost. Mama, I know you're in there. Please, I need to talk to you. He called out through the door. I need your help. It's an emergency. Emergency? That was the word he had used so many times before to open my purse. That magic word that turned my money into his. But this time, it didn't work. I stayed on the other side of the door, silent, unseen, and free. Mama, please, the bank called me. They say the mortgage is overdue. If I don't make a payment this week, they will begin the process of foreclosure. I don't understand what went wrong. You always paid your share, as if the house were also yours, as if I lived there, as if I enjoyed those walls that slammed in my face. I need $8,000 now, this week, or we will lose the house. Do you hear me? We will lose the house. His voice grew louder, panic, raw and real. I stayed silent, breathing gently, feeling each word bounce against the door and fall to the floor. Words that no longer reached me, that no longer hurt me. Tiffany and the children have nowhere to go. Is that what you want? Your grandchildren out on the street? Manipulation, the last resort, using the children as a shield, just as always. But I remembered. I remembered Tiffany telling me the toys I brought were ordinary. I remembered they wouldn't even let me see them at Christmas. I remembered those grandchildren were a convenient excuse, not a true presence I could touch. Mama opened the door. His voice had shifted. His voice had. It was no longer a plea, but a demand, as if he still believed he had rights over me, as if he could order me around again. He struck the door forcefully. I know you're in there. Open up now. I didn't open it. I got up from the couch, turned off the light, went to my room, closed the door, lay down on my bed, and listened as he continued hitting, shouting, demanding. Eventually, he grew tired. Finally, he left, and I fell into a deep sleep, free of nightmares. The days that followed were filled with a sense of desperation, calls, messages, emails, even messages from Tiffany. Celeste, we need to talk like adults. This is getting out of hand. Jamal told me you two had a misunderstanding, but you can't hold the whole family responsible for that. A misunderstanding. They called to tell me I was a loser, slammed the door in my face, and treated me like trash. A misunderstanding. Then I received another message from Tiffany. The kids miss you. They ask about you. That's not true, is it? Because if they truly missed me, they would have invited me to see them at Christmas. If they cared about me, they would have reached out. Another message. I know things were said in haste, but you must understand. Jamal was under a lot of pressure. He didn't mean what he said. Come home, let's talk. Let's work this out, fix it, as if I broke something, as if it's my job to put their perfect lives back together. I didn't reply to any of them because I finally realized something important. Silence is strength. Saying no without uttering a word is the harshest form of revenge. Letting go of being indispensable is the greatest liberation. I kept moving forward with my life, small, quiet, my own. While they drowned in their chaos, I thrived in my silence, like a plant finally getting sun after years in the shade. 3 weeks went by, 3 weeks of complete silence from me, and I was aware of the chaos unfolding on their side, and I understood it perfectly. Even though I didn't respond, even though I didn't open the door, and even though I deleted every unread message, I knew their world was falling apart because I had been the invisible glue holding it together. Without that glue, everything would collapse. One February afternoon, while I was having coffee in my small kitchen, I heard voices outside my building. Familiar voices arguing and shouting. I looked out the window and saw Jamal and Tiffany arguing in the street. He was gesturing desperately, trying to make a point. She was crying, but it wasn't tears of sadness. It was tears of anger and frustration. The kind of crying that happens when things don't turn out the way you hope. Your mother is destroying us, Tiffany yelled. You have to do something. Talk to her, beg her. I don't care how, but we need that money. I've tried, Jamal replied. She doesn't answer. She won't open the door. It's like she's disappeared. Then go to her workplace. Find her there. Wait outside. I don't know. Just do something. Because I am not going back to living in a small apartment. Not after everything we have accomplished, everything we have achieved, as if it were their effort, as if my money hadn't been the foundation of every single inch of that success. I watched them from above like distant deities observing humans, without intervening, without empathy, merely watching. Tiffany wiped her tears. Her makeup was smudged. She no longer appeared elegant, she looked hopeless. The bank has given us until Friday. If we don't pay the $8,000, they will start the foreclosure process. $8,000? Jamal, where are we going to get that? My salary hardly covers our expenses. You spend the entire year-end bonus on that trip to Miami. It was for our anniversary, to strengthen our relationship. Our relationship won't matter if we don't have a roof over our heads. They looked at each other with hatred. The kind of hatred that ignites when two people realize they have built their life on shifting sands and the tide has finally caught up with them. Then ask your mother for it. If you have to, crawl on your hands and knees because I refuse to go back to living a small life. Not after everything we've achieved. They eventually left. They got into their car, the one that no longer had insurance and that they could no longer legally drive, and drove away. I went back to my coffee, now cold, but I didn't mind. I drank it anyway because even cold coffee still tasted like victory. That night, I received an email from Tiffany. It was long, filled with desperate words that tried to sound sincere but smelled of lies. Dear Celeste, I know things between us haven't been perfect. I admit we might not have valued you as we should. But we are family, and families forgive. Families support each other. The children ask about you every day. They cry. They say they want their grandma. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to explain why you no longer come around. We need you, not just for financial help. We need you here with us. Please come home. Let's sit down and talk. Let's try to fix this with love, Tiffany. I read every word, every carefully crafted lie, every manipulation masked as affection. Then I deleted the email without replying, without a second thought. Because I had learned to read between the lines, and within those lines, there was only one truth. We need you financially. The rest was just decoration. Friday arrived, the deadline from the bank. I didn't do anything special. I went to the market and bought fresh vegetables, baked bread, and a small bunch of flowers for my table. Simple things, things that made me happy. As I was walking back home, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered, feeling a little instinct telling me I should. Celeste Jake. A formal professional voice. Yes, that's me. This is Miss Davis from Metropolitan Bank. I'm calling about the property at 422 Maple Drive. You are listed as a co-signer and guarantor on the mortgage. My heart beat faster. Yes, I know. I was called weeks ago. I understand. I am informing you that the primary title holders, Mr. Jamal Jakes and Miss Tiffany Jakes, have not made this month's payment. As the co-signer, you are responsible for paying the debt if they fail to do so. The amount owed is $4,300. Do you want to make the payment? I took a deep breath. This was the final moment, the last chance to turn back and be the mother I had always been, the one who rescues, who saves, who sacrifices. But it was also an opportunity to become something new, to be free in a way I had never experienced before. No, I said. My voice was steady and clear. I will not be making the payment. There was silence on the other end. I understand. Then I must tell you that this will impact your credit history. The foreclosure process will start next week. I understand. I accept the consequences. Are you sure? This is an important decision. I am fully sure. Very well. We will send you the necessary paperwork. Have a good day. She closed the phone, and I stood in the middle of the street, holding my market bags, my flowers, and my sense of freedom. I felt a smile spread across my face because I had finally achieved something I never imagined possible. I said no, and the world didn't collapse. The sky didn't fall. I simply kept walking home. That evening, I cooked a real meal for myself, taking my time with love. I played soft music, lit a candle, served myself dinner on my nicest plate, and ate alone. But I didn't feel lonely. Instead, I felt whole. The next day, Saturday, there was an unexpected visit. A quick knock at the door. I opened it without looking. It was a mistake. It was Jamal, but not the confident Jamal from Christmas. This Jamal looked broken. He had red eyes, an unshaven beard, and wrinkled clothes. He smelled of despair. Mama, he whispered softly, please, I need to talk to you. I tried to close the door, but he stepped forward, not with anger, but with a plea. Please, just 5 minutes, I beg you. Something in his voice made me hesitate. It wasn't the voice of the man who called me a loser. It was the voice of the boy I once knew. Only then did I allow him to come closer. He stepped inside like an intruder in unfamiliar territory, examining my small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. Maybe he really hadn't noticed it before. He sat down on my couch, burying his face in his hands and crying. It wasn't a manipulative act. It was genuine, torn, and desperate crying. We lost everything, he said through his sobs. He went on, the house, the car. Tiffany left me. She took the kids to her mother's. She says I'm a failure, that I can't support my family, that it's all my fault. He looked up at me with pleading eyes. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for everything, but please help me. He paused, then added, I need money for an apartment to start over and try to get my family back. I sat quietly in front of him, watching him like one might observe a wounded animal with sympathy, but without the pressing urgency to help. How much do you need? I asked. Maybe $10,000 or $15,000 for the deposit and the first month's rent to get basic furniture, just enough to show Tiffany I could handle it. Nearly half of what I had left from my savings. For years, I had given them everything I had managed to save. No, I said simply and directly. He blinked as if he hadn't understood me. What? I won't give you money, Jamal. His face changed, showing confusion first, then anger. How can you say that? I am your son, your only son. Exactly. You are my son, not my owner, not my purpose, not my reason to give up my life. But I need you. I needed you at Christmas. I needed you when I was 64 years old, and I came with gifts and hope. But you told me I was a loser, that I wasn't worthy of being in your house. That was a mistake. I was stressed. I didn't think it was a mistake. I clung to that word, a mistake that cost me years of dignity, a mistake that revealed exactly what I was to you, simply a walking bank account. Mama, please, you're not going to leave me on the streets. You left me first. But my street was emotional and it hurt even more. He stood up, trembling with anger. You're selfish, a bitter old woman. You'll regret this. Maybe I will, but it will be my regret, not yours. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, and I remained sitting on my couch, feeling the weight of his words. Selfish, bitter. Perhaps he was right. But if being selfish meant loving myself for the first time in years, then so be it. And if being bitter meant refusing to let myself be used again, then I would be bitter. Because I finally understood something. True love doesn't drain you, it fills you. What I shared with my son wasn't love, it was a transaction. And transactions end when one side stops giving. I stopped giving. The days that followed that visit felt strange. I felt no guilt, as I had expected. I didn't wake up at night worrying that I had been cruel. I didn't regret shutting the door on him because I had finally grasped something important. Saying no didn't make me a bad mother. It made me a human being. And human beings have limits. February gave way to March. The snow gradually melted away. The streets were filled with that gray mud left behind when winter moves on. But spring was not quite here yet. I kept up my usual routine: work, shopping, reading, peace. But inside, I sensed a change. Not outwardly, but within. I looked into the mirror and saw someone different, calmer, steadier, as if I had removed a costume I had worn for many years. The costume of the perfect mother, the rescuer, the one who always says yes. Now I was simply Celeste. Without a surname, without titles, without obligations I hadn't chosen. One afternoon, while cleaning the house of Mrs. Holloway, my longest standing client, she offered me some tea. We sat in her bright, cheerful kitchen. She was in her 80s, a widow with 3 children who visited her every Sunday without fail. You look different, Celeste, she said. Lighter, as if you left something heavy somewhere. I smiled. Something like that, family issues. I nodded. I didn't say more, but she understood. She had that wisdom that only comes with age. Let me tell you something, she began. When my children were young, I gave everything too: my time, my money, my life. I thought that was love. One day, my husband told me something that changed everything. He said, the love that empties you isn't love. It's sacrifice. And sacrifice only works when it's mutual. Her words cut through me. And what did you do? I learned to say no. I realized that being a good mother doesn't mean being a martyr. And you know what happened? My children started to respect me more because I finally had something they couldn't take away: my dignity. I sipped my tea quietly, reflecting on the healing that had begun. You made the right choice, Celeste. Whatever you did, it was the right thing. I left that house feeling something new in my chest: validation. Not from my son, not from Tiffany, but from someone who had walked the same difficult path and survived, who had grown stronger. That night, I received a message, but it wasn't from Jamal. It was from Tiffany. Celeste, I need to talk to you. It's about the children. It's urgent. Please respond. The children, always the children, were the perfect shield, the faultless excuse. But this time I responded, not for her, out of curiosity. What happened? I asked. Thank you for answering. Look, I know things are strained between us, but the children are hurting. They don't understand why we lost the house, why daddy doesn't live with us anymore, why everything has changed, and they're asking about you. They say they want to see their grandma. I read the message 3 times, searching for manipulation, and I found it in every word. If the children inquire about me, you can give them my address. They're welcome to visit whenever they like, but you and Jamal are not. There was a long silence. Then the reply came, "That's cruel. They are young children. They can't come alone, so they don't ask about me as often as you claim. It's unreasonable. You may be a bitter woman, but I am a bitter woman with money in the bank. Can you say the same?" There were no further responses. I blocked the number because I realized something else. The children were real. Their love was possibly genuine too, but they were being used as a tool, as a form of pressure. And I wasn't going to let myself be manipulated by that. If those children ever truly needed me, I would be there. But I wouldn't support an entire troubled family just to see my grandkids. That wasn't love, it was blackmail. March moved forward. One day, while I was walking through the park near my apartment, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. It was Jamal sitting alone on a bench, staring into the distance. He looked terrible, thinner, much older, as if he had aged 10 years in just 2 months. A part of me wanted to go over and ask if he was okay, to offer some help, because maternal instincts don't turn off like a switch. They stay there, whispering and pushing. But I didn't move. I remained behind a tree, watching him as if I were a stranger, watching a man I didn't know. Then I saw something else. A woman approached him. No, not Tiffany. Another woman, older, elegant, with perfectly styled gray hair. She sat down beside him. They began to talk. Jamal explained himself using gestures. The woman nodded, her face serious. Then she took out an envelope and handed it to him. Jamal opened it, and I saw his expression change, surprise mixed with relief. The woman stood up, patted his shoulder, and walked away. Jamal stayed there, staring at the envelope. And for a brief moment, I noticed something on his face. It wasn't gratitude or happiness. It was something darker, calculation. I left before he could see me with questions, doubts, but also a sense of certainty. My son was searching for another Celeste, another source of money, because he hadn't learned anything or changed. He was simply looking for his next way to get what he wanted. That night, I couldn't get to sleep. Not because I felt guilty, but because I was curious. Who was that woman? What was inside that envelope? Why did I still care? 2 days later, the answer came with a knock on my door. I opened it to find a woman, again, the same woman from the park. "Is this Celeste Jake?" she asked. "Yes, I am. My name is Ms. Evelyn," she added. "I'm your son's neighbor." "Well, a former neighbor, back when he still had a house," I replied. I invited her inside, feeling cautious and a little confused. She sat down, refused the tea I offered, and went straight to the point. "I need to tell you something. Something your son doesn't want you to know." My stomach clenched at her words. "Go on. Over the past year, I've observed many things. I am alive. I lived in the house next door. Thin walls, windows close together. You hear and see things. Tiffany has a compulsive shopping habit. I saw the deliveries every day, boxes, bags, packages from high-end stores, clothes, shoes, purses, things she never actually uses. She just keeps buying more. That's not really my business, I told myself, even though I felt it probably was. There's more to it." Miss Evelyn took a deep breath. "Jamal told me you've been helping them with money, sending funds each month meant for the children's needs." I nodded. $600 a month. She shook her head. "The kids went to public school, wore regular clothes, ate well but not extravagantly. That money wasn't going to the children. So where was it going? Tiffany has 3 credit cards in her name, all fully maxed out. She owes $40,000. Jamal didn't find out until the bank turned down his mortgage refinancing application. That was when he realized the full truth. She was using the mortgage money to pay only the minimum on her credit card, constantly shifting funds from one place to cover another. That's why they lost the house, not just because you stopped helping, but because she was feeding her addiction." I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" She explained, "Because I saw him in the park today, trying to manipulate me, asking for money, claiming you were a cruel mother who abandoned them, blaming everything on you. And I understand that story because I was in her shoes 20 years ago. I looked at her closely and saw the invisible scars she carried. I saw the wisdom gained through hardship." She admitted, "I gave him 1,000. I told him it was the last of it and not to come looking for me again. Still, I know he will return. People like Jamal and Tiffany don't really change. They only change victims. She then stood up and left a card on my table. If you ever want to talk or need reassurance that you made the right choice, call me. And she was gone, and I was left with the truth. A truth I didn't seek, but one I needed to face. My money was never meant for the children. It wasn't for their needs. It was used to feed Tiffany's addiction, to keep up a falsehood, to fund an illusion. Jamal allowed it, helped make it happen, and used me as the solution. That night, I wrote in a notebook for the first time in years. I expressed everything: my anger, my pain, my sense of release. And at the end, I wrote something that surprised even me. I forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. April arrived with rain, the soft kind that washes the streets and leaves everything smelling fresh. I carried on quietly, with determination, but something had shifted after Miss Evelyn's visit. It wasn't anger anymore. It was a clear, final understanding. Jamal wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. That truth hurt more than any insult because it's one thing to be used and another to realize they knew they were using you all along. And even enjoyed it one morning while I was having coffee. I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but something inside urged me to answer. A serious professional male voice said, "Miss Jakes, this is Mr. Carter. I am an attorney representing Metropolitan Bank in the foreclosure case involving the Maple Drive property. You are listed as a cosigner." My heart rate quickened slightly. I knew what it was about. I had been contacted weeks earlier, so I understood the situation. I was calling to share some new information I thought you should be aware of. Can we meet in person? It's important. What is it about? I prefer to talk face to face. It's a sensitive matter. Something in his tone made me agree. We arranged to meet at a quiet public cafe the next day, neutral and safe. That evening, I didn't sleep well. Not because I was afraid, but because I was filled with anticipation. The feeling was like when you sense something significant is about to be uncovered, but you're unsure if it will be good or bad. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered tea, sat by the window, and watched the street. Mr. Carter arrived on time, dressed in a gray suit, a subtle tie, carrying a leather briefcase. He appeared as someone who knew many secrets. "Miss Jakes, thank you for coming." He took a seat across from me, ordered a coffee, and waited until the waitress left before speaking. "I will be straightforward. During the review of the account connected to the foreclosure, we discovered some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" He took out some documents from his briefcase and placed them on the table. "When you signed as co-signer 5 years ago, you also agreed to bank authorizations. Do you recall? Vaguely, I signed quite a few papers that day. One of those authorizations permitted your son and daughter-in-law to access details about your bank accounts for income verification, as specified in the contract. The issue is they used that authorization for something beyond what was intended." Mr. Carter pointed to some numbers in the documents. "For the past 3 years, your son Jamal has been reviewing your bank statements every month, sometimes every week. Why? To know exactly how much money you have available. His goal was to figure out how much they could ask you for without leaving you completely without funds in order to maximize their profit." The words hit me hard like stones. Profit, as if I were an oil well, a natural resource to be exploited. "There's more." He showed me another document. 18 months ago, when you sent $8,000 for what was supposed to be your initial car payment, that money never went toward the car. The car was already paid for. It was used and it had cost $20,000. They had $18,000 to saved from a bonus Jamal received. They only needed $2,000 more, but they asked you for eight. The remaining $6,000 vanished into various purchases: dining out, clothes, a weekend at a spa. Unknowingly, you funded Tiffany's lifestyle. I felt a wave of nausea, not just sadness, but a pure, burning rage. "How did you find out this information?" I asked. "I am the bank's lawyer, but I am also a father." What I saw in these documents felt like financial abuse. So I looked into it more carefully than I needed to, because I wanted you to understand the full truth. Why me? My mother experienced something similar with my brother. She passed away thinking she had been a bad mother because she refused to keep giving him money. She never realized that my brother had been systematically manipulating her. I regret not telling her the truth. The silence between us was heavy, filled with stories of mothers being used and children forgetting that love isn't just a transaction. There is something else, he went on, something you need to know before making any decisions. When your son applied for the mortgage loan, he had to list his income and expenses. In the section about family support, he stated that you send him 600 each month. That boosted his income profile, helping him qualify for a larger loan. They used my generosity as a way to push into deeper debt. They based their whole life on the assumption that I would keep making payments forever. Exactly. And when you stop sending money, they didn't just lose your support, they also lost the funds that the bank expected to receive regularly. That's why they defaulted so quickly. I asked, what are my options? Legally, as a cosigner, you are responsible for the debt. But because of evidence of financial manipulation and unauthorized access to confidential information, we might argue fraud. We could request that your name be removed from the contract, and the other party would then be responsible for the entire debt. The bank would proceed to foreclose. They would lose any equity they had built, and their credit rating could be damaged for years. If we win the case, your credit record would remain clean, as if you had never been involved. I looked out the window. The rain had started again. Drops ran down the glass like tears that weren't mine. I asked, what do you suggest? Carter leaned back in his chair. I can't make that decision for you, but I can tell you this. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right not to bear the consequences of others' irresponsible choices, even if those others are your family. Family. That word had been my burden for years. I want to move forward. I said, I want my name removed. I want to be free from this. He nodded. I will begin the process tomorrow. I will need you to sign some papers, and you should prepare yourself. For what? For your son's reaction. When he discovers you're taking legal steps against him, it won't be easy. I don't care about easy anymore. I just want to be free. Mr. Carter smiled slightly. Those are the words of someone who has finally recognized her worth. I left that cafe feeling different from how I had entered. Not lighter, but stronger, because I finally possessed something I had never had before. Information, power, and control. I was not a victim of circumstances. I was the one who created my own freedom. The following days involved handling paperwork, signing papers, and making declarations. Mr. Carter was efficient and careful with every detail. Each document he showed me was another sign, another piece of proof that my son had used me in a planned way. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a matter of need. It was a system. A week later, Jamal received the legal notice. Mr. Carter warned me that a strong reaction would follow, but nothing prepared me for how intense it would be. My phone rang nonstop, 50 calls in just 1 hour. There were angry messages, insults, and accusations. You're a traitor. You're ruining me. How could you do this to your own son? I hate you. I wish I had never been your mother. I read every message and felt each word like a punch to the chest. But this time, I didn't bleed. This time, I had armor because I finally understood something essential. True love does not destroy, manipulate, or take control. And what I had with my son was not love. It was a harmful dependence. It was exploitation masked as filial duty. Tiffany also wrote, but her message was different, more careful, and planned. Celeste, I know you're upset, but think about the children. If you go through with this, they will grow up believing their grandma broke up the family. Is that how you want to be remembered, as the villain? The villain. It's strange how, in their story, I was the bad person. Not them for lying, not them for stealing, not them for taking advantage of me, just me for defending myself. I responded only once to Tiffany. My reply was short and clear. The children have a right to know the truth. When they grow older, I will be there to tell them. But you won't be part of that conversation. I blocked both of your numbers because I've learned that you can't reason with people who see you only as a resource. Sometimes you just have to walk away and build strong walls. Walls with doors, but doors I alone control. May brought sunshine, the kind that warms without causing harm. That invitation called me to go out, to truly live again after a long time. I wanted to experience life fully, not just to survive or simply get by, but to genuinely live. The legal process continued to move forward. Mr. Carter kept me updated. Every new report was a step closer to freedom, but also a step towards the inevitable, the final confrontation. Jamal arranged a meeting through his own lawyer, hoping to negotiate. They wanted me to withdraw the lawsuit. In return, they didn't specify what they were offering, but I understood. There was nothing tangible on the table. They just wanted me to become the old Celeste again, the one who gave in, who forgave, who paid the price. I agreed to meet, but not for their sake. This was for me, because I needed to look them in the eye one last time. I had to say what I had kept inside for years. I needed to close that chapter with my own hands. The meeting was set in Mr. Carter's office, neutral ground, professional, with witnesses present. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in my finest clothes. They weren't costly clothes, but they belonged to me. I bought them with my own money, earned through my efforts, and that made me feel strong. Jamal arrived with Tiffany. They seemed tired, worn out, but also furious, like animals trapped in a corner. We sat on opposite sides of a large table. Mr. Carter was on my right, their lawyer, Mr. Sterling on their left, creating a tense, cold atmosphere, like a small Cold War. Mr. Sterling was the first to speak. His voice was serious, and he wore an expensive suit. Miss Jakes, we are here to find a solution that works for everyone, especially the children. The children? I echoed, tired of hearing them used as shields. Mr. Carter cut in again, impatient. Before we discuss solutions, let's stick to the facts. Your client used my client's confidential financial information without clear permission, and your client lied about where the requested funds were supposed to go. Your client borrowed money based on income that wasn't theirs to use. Those are the facts, Mr. Sterling said. He looked uncomfortable. These are just interpretations, I replied. My client acted in good faith. He thought he had complete approval. Mr. Carter responded, there's no such thing as implicit approval in bank contracts. There are only signed documents, and those documents reveal misconduct. Tiffany moved closer, her voice trembling, not out of sadness, but from restrained anger. This is absurd. Celeste, you're his mother. Mothers are supposed to support their children, not sue them. I stayed quiet, taking a deep breaths, staying in control. Jamal then spoke. His tone was different, more deliberate. Mom, I understand things have gotten out of hand. I know we've made errors, but this is going too far. You're tearing your own family apart. I repeated, my family. My voice was steady, cold. Where was my family at Christmas? Where was my family when you called me a loser? Where was my family every time you needed money, but never your time? That was a mistake. I already told you, a mistake that resulted in $36,000 in direct transfers, $8,000 in fake car payments, and numerous emergencies that never truly were emergencies. It wasn't just a mistake, Jamal. It was part of the system, wasn't it? That's not fair. You've misunderstood everything. Mr. Carter placed several documents on the table, bank statements, emails, records of bank access. They were all here, clear and undeniable. There could be no misunderstanding. Mr. Sterling looked at the documents and his face changed. I saw the exact moment he realized that his case was weak, very weak. Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. This is a trap. You brought us here to humiliate us? No, I said. I brought you here so you could hear something. Something I need to say so I can finally move on. The room became silent. Everyone was watching me, waiting. For 64 years, I lived for others, first for my parents, then for you, Jamal. I always believed that was love. I thought that sacrificing myself would get me loved, needed, and important. But I was wrong. True love isn't meant to drain you. It doesn't take advantage or tell lies. And what you showed me wasn't love. It was simply convenience. I was needed, and when I was no longer useful, I was discarded. But that's not true. We care about you. You care about me, or maybe you care about what I can provide. Because when I had nothing left to give, suddenly I wasn't welcome anymore, even at Christmas. Jamal looked down, and Tiffany crossed her arms. No one spoke, because there was nothing to say. Only the truth remained, and the truth hurt. I am moving forward with the legal process, I continued, not out of revenge, but to protect myself. I finally understood that I cannot rescue you from the outcomes of your choices, and I shouldn't try. And what about us? Jamal asked, "What are we supposed to do? What parents always do? Solve the problem without using others as a way out. You're going to leave us with nothing. In fact, you've already left yourselves with nothing." I just stopped being the fix that covered up the real issue. Tiffany stood up. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were tears of anger, not sadness. "You're selfish, a bitter old woman. I wish Jamal had never met you." "Me too," I replied, because maybe then he would have learned to stand on his own 2 feet. They stormed out, slamming the door behind them, leaving hostility in the air. And Mr. Carter waited quietly until their footsteps faded away. "You did very well," he said. "I know that wasn't easy." "It wasn't, but it was necessary." "How do you feel?" I paused to consider the question. "Honestly, like I've finally stopped carrying something that was never mine. Like I've set boundaries I should have established decades ago. It feels like freedom." June arrived with hot weather. The legal process had reached its end. The judge examined the evidence, listened to the arguments, and reached a decision. My name was removed from the mortgage. The debt still belonged entirely to Jamal and Tiffany. My credit score was cleared. I was legally, financially, and emotionally free. Mr. Carter called to share the news with me. "Congratulations, Celeste, you won." You truly won. It didn't feel like a victory, though. It felt more like survival. That afternoon, I walked through the park, the very same one where I had seen Jamal many months before. But everything was different now. The trees were lush with green leaves, flowers were in bloom, children were playing, and life was moving forward. And I was a part of that life, not as a shadow, but as a real person. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, felt the warmth of the sun on my face, and for the first time in many years, I smiled. A genuine smile, no pretending, no trying to please anyone, just mine. Miss Evelyn, my neighbor, found me sitting there. We talked, and in that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't alone. There were other women who had walked this difficult path, women who had survived and gone on to thrive. If they could do it, so could I. September brought unexpected news. Carter called again. Jamal had filed for personal bankruptcy. He would lose everything he owned. The house had already been foreclosed, the car had been taken back. They were now living in a small, inexpensive apartment just like I was. The irony didn't escape me. My son finally understood what my life was like. The life he used to look down on, the life of what he called losers. "How do you feel about that?" Mr. Carter inquired. "I'm not sure. It's not quite satisfaction, but it's not sadness either. It's something in between. And I want you to know one more thing. During the bankruptcy proceedings, Tiffany filed for divorce. Apparently, once the money was gone, love disappeared too. She took the children and went back to her mother's house in another state. Jamal is now alone." The words drifted through the room. Alone, just like I had been, just as he left me at Christmas. The difference was I chose my solitude. He did not. It was a result of circumstances. October arrived with its colors. The leaves changed to red, orange, and yellow. Everything was fading away only to be reborn. And I felt I was part of that cycle too. Letting go of my old ways, I prepared to start anew. One quiet afternoon, as I was reading in my apartment, there was a gentle knock at the door. It was a soft, hesitant knock, not loud or aggressive. I looked through the peephole. It was Jamal, alone. No Tiffany was with him, and there was no anger on his face, only fatigue. I didn't rush to open it. I stayed in place, peering through the small glass, seeing my son, now a stranger. "Mama," he called softly. His voice sounded different, fragile and broken. "I know you're in there. I'm not here to ask for money. I just want to talk. Give me 5 minutes, please." Something in his tone made me pause. I slowly opened the door, but only a crack, keeping the chain on as if I were opening it to someone I didn't know. "What do you want?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "I just need to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago. You were right about everything. I was a fool, a manipulator, a lousy son. And I am sorry. I know saying sorry isn't enough. I realize I have caused damage I cannot fix. But I needed you to understand that at last I do." Tears streamed down his face. They weren't tears aimed at manipulation. They were honest, painful tears of remorse. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect anything in return. I simply wanted you to know I finally understand. He turned, beginning to walk toward the stairs. Jamal, I called. He stopped, turning around with a hopeful look. Thank you for coming, for saying that. It means there's a chance. No, I cut in. This doesn't mean we go back to how it was. That is gone. But it does mean I listened. And maybe with a lot of time and effort, you can rebuild something. Not with me, but with yourself. He nodded in understanding. I get it. And Jamal, one more thing. Please make sure the children know I love them. This wasn't about them. It was about boundaries, respect, and dignity. I will tell them. He left, and I closed the door behind him. This time, there were no tears, no trembling hands, only a quiet sense that something had come to an end. Not something to be fixed, but simply finished. Sometimes ending is enough. November arrived with the familiar chill, the kind that signals the year is drawing to a close, that cycles are coming to an end, and that everything which began will eventually find its conclusion. I had changed, but not in any obvious way. It wasn't a dramatic transformation like in a movie. Instead, it was something deeper and more meaningful. I had learned to listen to my own voice. That voice, which for years had been silenced by the needs of others, by expectations, and by guilt, was now clear and gentle, yet strong. It reminded me of simple truths. You matter, your needs are valid, and it's okay to say no. One morning, while sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, I saw the first snowfall of the season. Soft flakes fell silently, blanketing everything in pure white, as if the world was offering itself another chance, saying, what has happened is over, but today is new. My phone rang, showing an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but I answered. Sometimes you have to take the call to find out what's next. Miss Jakes spoke softly, her voice professional yet gentle. A young woman. Yes, this is Andrea. I am a social worker at the Family Services Center. I'm calling because your name was listed as an emergency contact for your grandchildren, Marcus and Kayla. My heart stopped for a moment. Did something happen to them? No, they're physically okay. But there's a situation we need to talk about. Could you come to our office tomorrow? I agreed without much thought. Although I had set boundaries with Jamal and Tiffany, the children were different. They didn't choose their circumstances. They were victims, just as I had been. The next day, I arrived at the office, a plain gray building busy with families trying to rebuild their lives. Andrea welcomed me. She was young, probably around 30, with kind eyes that carried a weariness, an exhaustion born from witnessing a lot of pain. Miss Jakes. The children have been living with their mother, Tiffany, and their maternal grandmother for the past 3 months. During this time, there have been several incidents, including heated arguments and emotional distress. The grandmother has health problems and is unable to care for them properly. Jamal, the father, applied for shared custody, but it was temporarily denied. He lives in a small studio apartment, works double shifts, and is still rebuilding his financial stability. Despite this, he remains interested in custody. Why are you calling me? Tiffany mentioned that you might be a temporary option while she sorts out her situation, perhaps for 3 or 6 months, just until she can find her own place and get everything stabilized, I thought. I leaned back in my chair, considering this was exactly what I had feared, that they would need me again, that they would come back, not out of love, but out of necessity. And if I said no, I wondered. Andrea sighed. The children would likely be placed into temporary care, living in foster homes, separated from their mother, their father, and everything familiar to them. Guilt began to rise in my throat, a familiar feeling, that heavy weight. But this time I recognized it and stopped myself. I told myself I needed to think things over. I needed time, I understood. But Miss Jake, these children need stability. And according to all reports, you are the only person in this family who provides it. I left that office shaking, not with fear, but with anger. Because once again, I was being asked to be the hero. Once again, my stability, which I had worked so hard to build, was being seen as something to sacrifice. I called Miss Evelyn. I needed someone who understood. We met at a cafe, and I shared everything with her. She listened quietly, without interrupting. Then she said something I hadn't expected. What do you want to do? Not as a grandmother, not as Jamal's former victim, as Celeste. What does Celeste want? I honestly thought about the question, reflecting deeply. My wish is to help the children, but I also fear being manipulated again. I don't want this to become a new way for others to control me. Then I decided to set clear terms. Miss Evelyn advised me, if you're going to do this, do it on your own terms, not theirs. Have formal legal temporary custody with well-defined boundaries. No Tiffany or Jamal living with you and no extra money for them, only for the children. Ensure supervised visits, mandatory family therapy, everything documented legally and everything clear. She told me I could ask for whatever I needed. And if they refused, my answer was simple: no. Her advice brought me clarity because she was right. I wanted to help, but I didn't have to sacrifice myself in the process. That night, I made a list of my terms, my conditions, and my boundaries. They were firm and non negotiable. The next day, I reached out to Andrea and explained my position. She listened carefully, took notes, and said something that caught me off guard. Those are very fair terms, Miss Jakes. In fact, they are exactly the kind of arrangement these children need. 2 weeks later, everything was officially set. Marcus and Kayla would live with me for 6 months, under documented temporary custody. Tiffany and Jamal would have supervised visits every 2 weeks, along with family therapy sessions for everyone involved. I would also receive financial support from the state to help cover the children's expenses. I was determined not to use my own money to clean up other people's messes. The day they arrived felt strange, exciting, and terrifying all at once. Marcus was the first to come in, shy and unsure, looking around my small apartment as if it were unfamiliar territory. "Grandma," he softly asked, "it's as in, can we really stay?" "Yes, my love, for a little while," I replied. Kayla, who was 5 years old, ran up to me quickly and hugged me fiercely. "I missed you so much," she said. In that hug, I felt a mix of something breaking and healing all at once because this was different. This wasn't for Jamal, it wasn't for Tiffany, it was for them. For two children who hadn't asked to be caught in the middle of broken adults, the first days were hard. Marcus asked many questions. Why don't we live with mom? Why doesn't dad come? Did we do something wrong? I answered him with age-appropriate honesty. Adults sometimes make mistakes, and when that happens, everyone needs time to fix things. But none of this is your fault, none. Gradually, we established a routine. Breakfast together, school, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Small, simple routines, but full of stability. The kind they hadn't had in months. One night, as I was reading them a story, Marcus asked a question that broke my heart. "Grandma, why aren't mom and dad like you? What do you mean? You don't yell, you don't fight, you don't say mean things. They always do." I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Some people haven't yet learned how to face their problems in a healthy way. When you're unsure how to handle them, you may unintentionally hurt those around you. Sometimes even those you love you in their own way, but love alone isn't always enough if it's not expressed in a way that doesn't cause pain. Kayla curled up close to me. "I love you, Grandma, and you don't hurt me." Hearing those words healed something I didn't even realize was broken, because they showed me that everything was worthwhile. Every time I said no, set a boundary, or closed a door, it all led to this moment where I could give them what they needed most: peace, not money. December came around again, a whole year after that Christmas, after that closed door, and after those words that changed everything. This time, I decorated my apartment not with expensive items, but with creations made by the children: drawings, paper ornaments, and a small tree filled with love. Tiffany and Jamal arrived for their supervised Christmas visit. The atmosphere was awkward and tense, yet still polite. The children gave them handmade presents. They brought toys and awkward words of affection. When they left, Jamal paused by the door. "Thank you, Mama," he said, "for doing this, for being what we couldn't be." I answered, "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for them." He nodded and left, and I closed the door. This time, not with anger, but with a sense of peace. I had finally found my balance. I could love my grandchildren without losing myself. I could help them without destroying my own spirit. I could be a grandmother without feeling like a victim. That night, after I put the children to bed, I sat by the window. The snow was falling softly once again, just as it had a year earlier. But I was different now. I was no longer the woman who knocked on that door with gifts and hope. I was no longer the woman who accepted crumbs and called it love. I was no longer the woman who gave everything to others. I was Celeste, simply Celeste, with clear boundaries, dignity, and a sense of peace. As I watched the quiet snow fall, I realized one last thing. Perhaps true revenge is not about destroying those who hurt you. It's about rebuilding yourself. It's finding peace while they face the consequences. It's living well even as they learn their lessons. Maybe the real losers are those who stop taking responsibility for their mistakes. If that made me a loser, I would accept it proudly because I had gained something more valuable than their approval. I had won myself. After everything that had happened, I understood a simple but powerful truth. Peace doesn't come from trying to fix others. It comes from finally choosing yourself. For many years, I believed love meant sacrifice, but now I see that love without respect isn't truly love. Sometimes life makes you lose everything so that you can understand what truly matters. I lost a house and a family I thought I had, but in return, I discovered something better, myself. And that is worth more than any comfort money could ever provide. To everyone listening who has ever been told they were not enough, remember this. You are not defined by what others take from you. You are defined by what you choose to hold on to, your dignity, your peace, your freedom. If my story touched your heart or made you think, you can show your support by liking this video. Let's see how many of us are out there. I'd love to know which city you're from and what time you're listening. Feel free to leave a comment below. And if you wish to support my journey, you're welcome to send a small donation. Thank you for listening and for sharing your precious time with me. For more stories like this one, please check out the other videos on my channel and consider subscribing. I've added 2 new stories on the screen for you to watch.